Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dan.
Morning.
Welcome.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, good to see you again for our little Saturday morning chat in the UK. We like our chats and we like to share different bits of different books today. It's a bit of Neville, you have told me, on the law of assumption.
Yeah, that's right, Agnes. One of my favourite books of Neville's is The Power of Awareness. I think it's a little bit more accessible than some of the other books. I think the language is a lot more accessible to me personally, anyway.
Yeah.
Because as we know, it can get quite religious sometimes, and
yeah,
I struggle personally with some of them. I find it a little bit hard to get my head around or to see the relationship. But certainly with The Power of Awareness, that is one book, and The Prayer, The Art of Believing is another one that I find very accessible and chapters very easy to read.
Yeah,
it's very easy to see where he's coming from and really get a lot out of it. I think in so little words, sometimes there's so much detail behind it that you could for hours, really, couldn't you?
Yeah.
What I've done, I've got some Neville nuggets, to coin a phrase, from somebody very very in close proximity today, which I think is often a good way of doing these things, isn't it? Because you can throw them out there and we can really sort of pick them apart. Yeah. So the first nugget, and this isn't from The Power of Awareness, actually. This is just a general Neville quote, which I found, which I think is a really good one. So Neville says, "Simply dare to assume you are what you want to be, and you will compel everyone to play their part." So this quote I find very interesting, because it's always about what you assume, and it always starts with you, doesn't it? It doesn't start with everybody else, it starts with you. And I think often in life, and I know we've talked about this before, we try and change people from the outside, we try and change circumstances from the outside. And I think what Neville's saying on this quote section especially is that it all starts with the power of that assumption that you choose to accept as true. And then I think that energy from that assumption, that psychic energy, or that energy from your mind or your body that you project, then goes to the people in the proximity of you, and it affects them. And I think they pick up on that energy, and then, as Neville says, it compels them to play their part based on what your assumption is about yourself. Yeah. So you are actually sort of giving them the lines to the play, almost, I think. You're telling them how they should act towards you by how you feel, or how you assume the concept of what you assume the concept of yourself to be. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what he's saying in this quote.
Yeah, so I think it's so great when you see something in front of you with someone, and whether it's a boss or a family member or a romantic relationship or a sibling, or children or elderly parents, like, you go, okay, if this is showing up in front of me and it's not to my liking, what have I been assuming about that person? And once you ask yourself that question, then you can say, okay, I can uplift my assumptions, I can improve my assumptions, I can hold them in a much better light. And if I do that, then I can transform the relationship between them and I. And I remember there was someone in my life that I was projecting, we don't understand each other, they're nasty, and those two things I kept getting the evidence of. And I realized it's not just working on your self-love and your self-worth, as that is half of the nut. The other half of the nut is changing your assumption about that person, as well as working on your self-love. So I think it's once you get that it's those two parts that fit together, then that makes for a really fantastic relationship change. I mean, that person is in my life now, and I have a really good connection with them. Them being nasty is no longer it just doesn't happen anymore because I corrected what I was doing. And it really is like the story that Neville tells about the girl that was projecting those negative thoughts onto her boss that he talks about in Mental Diets. So
yeah, and it's similar with Florence's Florence Scovel Shinn story about the cap. That's a good one as well, isn't it?
Yes.
The woman who, I love the cap no matter what, or something. This is the quote, and I think that's really.
I bless the cap wherever he is, and
that's the one.
Yeah, she was projecting. I can't bless him if I don't know where he is. And Florence said, well, that's not love. That's condition, that you're setting conditions on him. And yeah, that was a great example. I'll put that story down below and the Mental Diet ones down below as well, because they're both excellent Neville stories.
Yeah, and I think with that kind of assuming the other, how you, or changing your assumption of the other person, I think there's a mental wall to get past, a mental block to get past, because you can often have a lot of emotion attached to that situation, and it's learning to transcend that and sort of look past that as you were in your imagination, in your mind, and you're using the law of assumption and almost stepping back from the emotional side of it and not letting the situation or the external situation dictate that assumption that you're trying to change, if you like. And I think that's, as people, that can be quite a challenge sometimes, and that's something that it's easier the more you do it, I think. It's just a case of practicing that, isn't it? And it's that muscle, I suppose, in your head, your mind muscle. The more you use it, the easier it gets, the more natural it becomes, this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And just remember, it's all within you, and going back inside every time. Something on the outside isn't what we want. It's going back to the inside, going back to the core, and changing that concept of self, but also the concept of other people, like you say. And then being patient and being persistent in that assumption, and then waiting, well, not waiting around for the change, but silently, patiently waiting for that change to manifest.
And holding steady, even when you don't yet see the result, it's not saying to yourself, okay, it's not working. It's saying this will eventually fall into place, and I just need to hold the state that this is how things are now, and not divert back to the old self in that
moment. So easy to do, isn't it, as well, I think. It's very easy to do. So Neville nugget number 2. This is from the awareness again, and this is from a chapter called The Effortless Way, chapter 14. So Neville says, because creation is finished, what you desire already exists. It is excluded from view because you can only see the contents of your own consciousness. It is the function of an assumption to call back the excluded view and restore full vision. It is not the world, but your assumptions that change. An assumption brings the invisible into sight. It is nothing more nor less than seeing with the eye of God, i.e. the imagination. So for me, Agnes, this one seems to be talking about conscious selection to me. I think when we say creation's finished, I think that means that everything out there that could possibly be is already there. It's just that due to what we consciously decide to focus on or select from those infinite number of possibilities is what we're seeing at the moment. And I think through the law of assumption, what we're doing is also selecting which outcome we want, or which path we want to take. And I think because the infinite possibilities are there, we have to almost consciously select it by this law, by applying this law of assumption that we're talking about. And I think that's why Neville says the assumption brings the invisible into sight. Because I think what it's saying is you're then creating a channel of energy with that potential outcome out of all the other possibilities. You're saying this is the one, and that energy is selecting or making a connection with that energy, and then that's drawing it to you, like like a magnet, and I think the magnetism comes through the assumption and the power and the naturalness of that assumption.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a powerful thing when you realize that your relationships really reflect back to you how well you're doing on the inside, with your inside self, with your inside states, with your inside focus, with your inside, where your thoughts are, where your feelings are, where your beliefs are. If you're not happy with the outside, you just go, okay, I've got the power to change this. I need to really look at, where am I still having a few issues within me? And then it's not to judge yourself, it's just to assess. And then you go, okay, now I'm going to correct by going this way. And if you keep doing that, you get better and better and better at quickly getting away from those negative tendencies that we can have, and then changing it towards the wanted. And then your life just gets easier and easier and easier all the time. And it's quite peaceful eventually.
Yeah, I think there's a stage of growth, and like there's a stage of personal growth, I think, as well, in what you're saying. I think it's very difficult sometimes to step back and examine yourself and think, this is actually coming from me, this is on me, kind of thing. And I think it's hard sometimes, because we almost want to look outside and blame some kind of circumstance or some kind of person. Say that, oh, it's because so and so didn't do this, or you know, X said this to me that I'm feeling this way, or I believe this. And yeah, they might have done that, but then I think it's also, you've got to take that on board, but then you've also got to have the courage almost to say, this is what I need to change about myself. I need to take the control back of my own life and my own destiny. And I think that can be quite a difficult thing at first, but again, like we said before, it gets easier and easier. And once you start to see the results of doing that, I think it's almost it's like a momentum, isn't it? You know, momentum gathers and it becomes a habit rather than just something you have to think about. You just naturally start to fall into that habit of doing that. And I think and
then you have better habits than not better habits, and then your life smooths out. You know, it just, like, I think back to how chaotic my life was around money, around love, around health, because I was working too hard because I never had enough money. And then when you're exhausted and your body's taxed all the time, then your mental state can't be positive. And then when your mental state's not positive, then it creates more issues and dramas and all of that. So the more you do it's a real cycle. The more you meditate and work on being at peace and letting go of things that are disturbing, and you know, getting enough sleep, going to markets, getting good healthy food made by nature, and then, you know, getting enough sleep and drinking enough water. You're doing all those basics. Your mental state becomes sharper and clearer by looking after those things. And then you're able to then do this work on, you know, whatever you're projecting onto people. You're able to do that work a lot more easily.
Yeah, and I think it's taking the reins back, isn't it, on your life? I think Wayne Dyer comes up with a great quote around about your emotions are like when they're not tamed, or your thoughts aren't tamed. It's like those cowboy films. He says when the person driving the horses loses control of the reins, and the cowboy cart's going off the road, and you have to grab those reins and bring back control your thoughts and your emotions and the direction of your thoughts and your emotions. And I think once you start to consciously do that, like you say, and then combining it with self-care, self-love, good food, lots of sleep, it all sort of steers you back onto the track, really, and brings everything into alignment, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, really does. And it's life then becomes you look forward to your days, you look forward to your afternoons, you look forward to your evenings, you look forward to going to bed, you look forward to meeting people, you look forward to your time alone, you look forward to the markets, you look forward to cooking. It's like everything is delightful.
Yeah, and I think you're on the right track when you feel that way, don't you? 'Cause feeling is the secret, as Neville says, and I think
Yeah.
almost like a vicious, not a vicious circle, but like a snowball effect, I should say.
Yeah.
So the more positive things you do, the more positive you feel. The more you feel positive, the more positive things you draw to yourself. The more you draw to yourself, the more positive you feel. The more you and it kind of it just really does sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It ascends you, doesn't it? You ascend through consciousness, effectively.
You do. And then when someone comes to disturb you, you see that energy or you feel that and you go, no, I'm not going to move towards that. And I'm going to really just ignore that and step away from it and go back into these other wonderful states. So you're not tempted to engage in people's stuff. Even though we know it's us pushed out, you make decisions to walk around potholes rather than to step into them. And that's a nice thing too, is it's not that we have perfect mental and emotional states all the time and nothing ever happens. But when something comes in, you go, no, and you just turn around and move away from it. And then you don't get snagged by things like other people's, whether people are in addiction or they're trying to take, there are people in our lives that do those things, and we can move away from those things by getting distracted and moving off into other things. So it unhooks you from those types of interactions.
Yeah, Prentice Mulford in his book, Your Forces and How to Use Them. I'll send you a link, Agnes, if people are interested.
Okay.
He talks a lot about what you were saying about being mindful of the energy that you attract or the energy that you surround yourself with. Because he says it doesn't matter how positive and uplifting you are, if you are around that kind of energy, invariably it starts to affect it mingles with your energy, and it does actually can bring your energy down. That's quite an interesting thing, and I think that's another aspect of self-love, isn't it? Is taking care of your energy and maintaining that and sort of policing it almost, your energy and where you put it.
It's interesting, Dan. There was a few conversations I've had this week with people watching certain programs around, dating programs, crime shows. And someone said to me, and it was a really interesting question, she said to me, yeah, but my self-love's good, so wouldn't that mean that stuff doesn't affect me? And I said, no, because it's a focus-based universe. So even if your self-love's good, if you're indulging in watching murder and mayhem every night, or you're engaging in watching really low-grade shows about people, I think the reference was Marriage at First Sight, like those kind of shows, or that where you see a lot of drama around relationships. If you are spending time watching those shows, indulging in those shows, it's no different to people getting into watching and getting engaged in a lot of social media, because social media upsets people mentally and emotionally, especially around relationships. And then you're watching, or if you're watching movies around betrayal, infidelity, all this stuff, your energy flows where your attention goes, as they say. So if it's crime, or if it's infidelity, or if it's comparing yourself to people on social media, you are not putting yourself in a mentally and emotionally good position by engaging in those things. Now, the more you do this work on yourself, you will realize that, and you will elevate yourself more to disconnect from those types of activities, because they're low-grade activities that affect your mental and emotional state. So you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? As Neville talks about seed time and the harvest, you plant seeds when you watch those things. You plant seeds when you're on social media feeling second best to people and what you see. You plant seeds when you're watching crime. You plant seeds when you're watching movies about infidelity. So these are you really wanting to germinate these seeds? Because as Neville says, people forget when they get a harvest, that they planted those seeds. So
Yeah.
I gave up that a long time ago because I know that it's created a lot of negative consequences for me, especially around the relationship stuff, where I would create being second best in relationships, because I had this fascination with watching those kind of movies, because they were a reflection of what I was living in my life. But it's chicken or the egg. It goes around and around, you see.
Yeah. I
So
think with the timings as well, when you're talking about the harvest,
yes,
this can be years ago, but it's just that because Neville says you don't know the appointed time, do you, when
you
it's going to
don't.
actually manifest? It could have been something you watched 5 years ago, but you just don't remember, like you say. And
Yeah,
suddenly something shows up that you weren't expecting in life, or something that, you know, it's not particularly nice, and you think, where did this come from? You know, I've been doing all the right work, I've been feeling
yeah,
good, and
yeah.
but then obviously, you know, prior to that, something might have happened
Mm,
that's was this. Yeah, I think that's where potentially revision can come in as well, can't it? If you feel there's something that you've
yeah,
done in the past that maybe be a bit negative, maybe, you know, could bring something that you don't want unfavorably,
yeah.
then go back and apply the pruning shears, as it were, and, you know,
Yes.
revise that scenario. But like you say, sometimes you can't remember these things, can you?
Yeah,
So it's being really
yeah.
mindful about what you watch and what you feed your
Mm,
self with, really.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's like your mind is a garden. It's like the dirt before you plant your harvest. So it's constantly being mindful of the fertilizer that you put on the dirt. And you
Yeah,
know, that kind of entertainment, as people do see it as entertainment, you know, everything registers itself to source, God or the universe. Everything registers because it is, as well, Abraham Hicks says it the best, it is a focus-based universe. So what are you focusing on? What are you spending your time on? And it's not it doesn't go unnoticed. It doesn't go unnoticed. So it really is, once you realize the impact of what you're putting your attention on, and the impact it has on your whole existence of life, such as watching these types of shows. I remember I used to think, oh my goodness, I'm watching. I mean, I used to love crime shows. You know,
yeah,
I used to really enjoy them, and it's interesting, and you find out who killed who and all that stuff. And it's like, you know, I found out that a friend of mine, she was not long ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago, was walking in the morning in broad daylight in London, and she had her headphones on and she got attacked. And it's like broad daylight. We're not even talking nighttime. And I thought, wow, this is why I have given up crime shows, because it does put a fear in you as a human being, not just as a woman, but as a human being,
yeah,
that stuff doesn't just happen at night now. It happens in broad daylight in cities every day around the world. So knowing
yeah,
that, why would I put myself at risk by planting seeds that will bring that to me? No, I am safe, I am secure, and I will continue to keep my mind away from that stuff to help me not go into fear that attracts, you know,
yeah.
those
So you
types of, yeah,
yeah, so you've got that internal assumption
yeah,
to say,
yeah,
you know, this
yeah,
is, I'm safe, I am well, you know.
yeah,
So then you can go to these places knowing that,
yeah,
you know, the assumption is going to manifest, you know, positive
yeah,
outcome.
yeah,
Definitely. Okay, so nugget number 3.
yeah,
All things are possible. Again, this is from the Power of Awareness, chapter 17, if anybody wants to look at this afterwards. So Neville says, through the mastery of your assumptions, you are in every truth enabled to master life. It is thus that the ladder of life is ascended. Thus the ideal is realized. I can't talk. Got my teeth back in. clue to the real purpose of life is to surrender yourself to your ideal with such awareness of its reality that you begin to live the life of the ideal and no longer your own life as if it was prior to this. Prior to this surrender, I should say. So I think it's what Neville's saying here is you're almost playing make-believe. You're going into the new state before you've got there, and your life through your imagination, through assuming the feelings, and you're almost pretending to be that which you want to be before you are that which you want to be.
Yeah.
And it's almost easier for when you're a child, it's easy to do these kind of things, isn't it? Because you daydream and you pretend to be this rich person, or you pretend to be this prince or princess who's in love, and it's easier to do that without all the adult distractions and things.
Yes.
It's almost becoming a child again at sometimes, and becoming or sort of becoming childlike in the way you imagine and the way you approach these things.
Yeah. I think the more you can live in that make-believe, and I do like revision. I think revision's great, especially for things that happened years ago in childhood that's already been and gone. But as an adult, I prefer prepaving. If you don't have an experience that you need to revise, that's better if you go in prepaving before you go into a meeting, before you go into a business deal, before you go into the bank to ask for money, before you go into that date with that amazing person. Isn't it better to prepave that so you don't have to revise? I think that's for here and now, prepaving is my preference over revising.
Definitely, yes. I think revising is possibly something that you would do initially, I think, when you're new to this kind of thing, isn't it? I think once you start to become aware of this, you like to revise, or you do tend to revise things that have happened to you in the past, so they don't affect the prepaving, or they make the prepaving easier, don't they, if you deal with the revision. Good point, exactly right.
Revision's good for stuff that happened to you when you were 10 or 15 or 20, and you obviously you didn't know then what you know now, so you go back and you clean those up, so the trajectory cleans up. Like Neville says, the past is still alive. It's all unrevised scenes from the past that cause the issues in today, in your here and now, in money, in work, in relationships, in your health. It's all unrevised stuff. So if you can go back and revise that and then prepave as you move through your day and your life now, you are just going to feel freer and freer and happier because you're releasing yourself from those things that pollute your experiences.
It's a double whammy, isn't it? You're getting rid of it's like a double Mac burger, not a single one. I don't know why I'm saying beef burgers, because I'm a vegan, but there we go. Double vegan McBurger then. There we are.
Burger. Now you made me want to have one now.
I know. But yes, I think it is almost a bit. It's making. I think the work, the future work becomes a lot easier, doesn't it, if the past is in a good place? And I think definitely. If you're cleaning out that water, if you're cleansing that water from the past, it's almost like the water going forwards that's coming out is cleaner kind of thing.
It's like one of those. What do they call it? Brita? Is it Vita Brita? What is it called? The
Brita jugs with the water.
Brita jugs. Yeah, I've got one of those. It's like putting it through that.
Oh, that's it. Absolutely. It's fascinating stuff, and I think it all goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Like we're saying, it's revision, projection, assumption with other people. Those kind of three things, when they work together, they can be very, very powerful, I think. Yeah, for sure. So let's go on to free will now. Okay. Another good chapter from Power of Awareness. So the Power of Awareness says, or Neville says, you win by assumption, what you can never win by force.
Mm.
Consumption is a certain motion of consciousness. This motion, like all motion, exercises an influence on the surrounding substance, causing it to take shape of, echo, and reflect that assumption. A change of fortunes, a new direction and outlook, merely a change in the arrangement of the same mind substance, consciousness. So yeah, I think never winning by force is quite a good, is quite a key thing here. Nothing ever comes good, nothing ever comes well from forcing, does it? Whether it's
Yeah.
or a relationship, a friendship, whatever. Really, I think external force doesn't work, does it? Or even
no.
It's almost the principle of least resistance as well, isn't it? It's not just external, it's internal as well. I think it's not forcing yourself to feel this way. It's got to be a natural kind of feeling, and it's got to come naturally for it to be genuine, I think. Otherwise, saying I am going to feel happy today, and you're not feeling happy, it doesn't just happen, does it? It's almost like you've got to get yourself into that feeling of being happy, and I am happy, I am secure, and it doesn't come through just saying I am happy or I am secure. There's got to be that feeling charging it, I think, behind it, hasn't there?
And
I think that's why and Neville often talks about that time just before we go to sleep, where we haven't got that conscious block saying, you know, you're not happy, or you're not fulfilled, or you're not rich, or you're not secure. It's almost like waiting till the guard's gone to sleep slightly and then sneaking past them into the castle to get gold, as it were. I think you've almost got to tame the conscious mind somehow. I think humans, that's something that is something that it gets easier and easier, I think, as we do this kind of stuff. And it's picking your time and picking your moments, I think, to do this work as well. Not when you're in the midst of something in the middle of your day necessarily, but like Neville said, before you go to sleep at night, or when you've got an hour or half an hour in the day to just sit back and do a meditation and clear your mind, and then start to focus on these things.
I think it's such a wonderful thing, knowing that we can create and then letting go and allowing. I think sometimes all these law of attraction techniques and things are about being an action figure, apart from meditation, where you're really letting go and surrendering, or imagining, and that's great, because we're using the mind to create desires. But I think what I see gets overlooked, and this is, I think, why people seem to struggle, and this might help those that are struggling right now to remember this bit, is that source, God, the universe, whatever words you prefer, is the delivery system. It's the DHL, it's the FedEx. So we have to put our desires out and then become ready in the receiving mode. But there needs to be, I think, a humility in remembering that although we are God and we are powerful creators, we are not in charge of the DHL. We're not. And the delivery system, we need to remember to have some humility. And this sometimes, I think, this do the techniques and make this happen, and there's a fine line between control and forcing and pushing and manipulating, and launching the desire, having some humility and allowing. And I think the people that learn the second bit are much more successful at maybe not so much the attracting, because you can attract if you push and manipulate and do all that. You can, to a degree, but the hanging on to it and keeping it, that bit you will struggle with if you're doing the manipulating, controlling, and pushing. those that understand allowing, surrender, letting go, and relaxing, they're the greatest creators of all, from what I've seen.
I think Stuart Wilde says the universe is impersonal. So it's what you ask for, whether it's a bad thing or a good thing, it will give it to you.
Yes.
But potentially there could be, as you say, there could be consequences. It could be difficult to get onto. I think it's very, very. It's worth remembering, I think, as well, that you put that energy out there. The FedEx parcel, they might send you a different parcel, but it will be better than, or it most likely will be better than what you've asked for, because the universe knows best. Or I think sometimes, like Florence, Scovel, Shinn talks a lot about, because Neville's can be quite specific about things, like with, I want this specific person, whereas Florence will say, I want love, or I want, a fulfilling relationship, or I want to be rich. Or so Neville might say, and this is not a criticism of Neville in any way, shape or form, but Neville will be quite specific and say, I want £100,000 in my bank by Thursday. Whereas Florence will say, I want to be financially stable. And who's to say that Florence, you might not get the 100,000, but you then might, get 200,000 or 300,000 from an investment or something that's from an aunt, from a rich relative or something like that. And I think sometimes it's not necessarily being too specific. You can do that. I think you definitely can do that, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. But don't be disheartened if the specific person or the specific outcome that you're after, the specific job that you want, doesn't come to mind, because the universe knows, or the universe is still going to deliver potentially with something possibly even better than what you think. Because I think we're limited to what we perceive as, our ultimate, is ultimate happiness, but the universe is infinite, and infinite possibilities. And I think it's almost having that trust sometimes in what the universe can deliver when we ask for it.
And that's what I love about Florence, is she says to pray for the divine design, perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect love, perfect self-expression. And she also said, she was talking about that nothing can resist a totally non-resistant person. It's like you become irresistible when you are in non-resistance, that you just flow with what comes, and you still, it's not like you just don't have any desires. You launch your desires, and then you become non-resistant, and it's really allowing, in terms of Abraham Hicks terms. It's being in a state, according to Neville's terms, and it's being non-resistant when you look at Florence. So they've all got their different ways of explaining it. So I'm so itchy in the last few days. I can't stop. I don't know if I've changed my soap, but I can't stop scratching.
And in some ways I really like the way Florence approaches things as well, because it is a little bit, I think it helps with non-resistance, that kind of flowing state. I'm going to ask for this, with faith, in the end, and then I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to let things play out how they're going to play out. I'm going to maintain that persistent state of what I want, and it's learning to flow with what's happening in your life, and not be too snagged, as it were, like you were saying before, on a situation, or being too focused on what the evidence of the senses say at that particular point in time, as Neville would say. The two complement each other very well.
It's nice because they're different, but they complement each other. Like if you're trying one thing and it's not working, you go, okay, let me try Florence's way now. Or if Florence's way isn't really working, you go, you know what, let me let it go and just get into the state, as Neville says. So it's like they've all really contributed something different to how we can break down the mechanics of a situation and use our mind to change, correct, improve the way we interpret something, the way we project out using the law of projection, using the law of assumption, using the law of attraction. How do I use these laws to get myself into a better state? So then whether I get the thing or not, it really doesn't matter, because I feel good now. And once you get to that point, everything falls at your feet, you see.
Yeah, you almost trick your mind, don't you, into being what you want anyway.
Yeah. It's not like, I'll be happy when I get. It's like, well, that's why you haven't got it, because that's your condition to the universe, to God, to source. I'm not going to be happy until. And there's the biggest handbrake of all. It's that. And once you understand that it's really the thing behind, like if you want a fully paid house, it's the security of having that. So why not try and feel secure now so the house comes? Why not feel the joy of, I'm doing meaningful work and it feels so good to get out of bed for that? Why? Because I would feel satisfied. Well, let me practice being satisfied now, because I'm dissatisfied a lot of the time. So as you work out ironing the wrinkles out of your state of being, then life is just so reflective of giving to you things, but you don't really need them. You'd like them, you enjoy them, but you don't need them, because you understand how to conquer your own state of being as you move through the world. And that is such an amazing, it's like you're at a higher level. You're not reacting to life. You're not just getting through the day. You are moving through, and you are pre-paving the path before you get there, so that it is totally enjoyable as you move down it. That is when you become, it's like your whole relationship to life changes. That's when you become a creator. That's what a creator is. Thank you for sharing all those nuggets. That's really excellent. And it's nice to compare Florence to Neville to Abraham, because people are watching. A lot of people that watch, this channel are looking at all these different ones, and it's nice to be able to have discussions about the differences and what's worked for people. And I always love, we can ask today, who do you prefer? Which methods do you find have worked for you? And people can share that down in the thread. And hopefully they've got a bit out of the nuggets that we've shared today, and that it helps.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all that.
You're welcome. It's been fun. It's nice to explore a chapter or a piece of, a paragraph in real depth, because there's so much richness and so much detail behind all this, I think, and so many different ways of looking at it, which all kind of complement each other, really.
It does. Yeah, they all dovetail together, and they add something different to the mix, so it's good.
Yeah, the tools of the mind, as it were. Whichever tool you need at a particular point in time to.
Tools of the mind. Oh, I like that. That's a nice statement. Beautiful. Well, Dan, do you want to say bye, and then I'll say bye, and then we'll say bye in private?
Yeah, sure. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope that was helpful. Feel free to comment, and I'm happy to sort of, if there's anything more you want to know about any of the quotes or where I got them from, then feel free to message me, and I'll happy to reply and discuss.
Lovely. Thank you for your time, Dan. It's always a pleasure to dissect the meat off the bone, so to speak.
Absolutely, Agnes. Yeah,
vegan style if you don't eat meat.
To cut the burger up.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I will put the links down below to what Dan and I have discussed, so you can go and check it out. Lots of love, and I will see you as always in the next video or YouTube.